Folks, I know that some of you may not care to hang around for another 45 minutes or so, so if you need to leave, feel free to without anybody making a judgment on your departure. Following up on Burl, I would like to say that some of the questions that were asked, some of what I'm going to be saying about the three forms of socialism is going to answer that, and as to why we have the foreign policy we do. But first I want to talk about the thing that actually enabled NAFTA and actually enabled the Pacific Trade Agreement. And Congressman Bentivolio will be the authority on this, and I hope that I've got this straight because he will fact check it. There's a thing called, in Congress and the Senate, I think it's actually the Senate, and I don't think the Congress actually has this authority. It's called fast track authority. Now, there is something that NAFTA and the Pacific Trade Agreement had in common, and that was fast track authority. It gave the President a fast track. It changed the constitutional authority of the Senate from a supermajority of 60 votes to ratify, advise and consent, a treaty to only having to have a simple vote to allow it to come down and have 51 votes to say this treaty is okay. This is a problem I had with Ted Cruz, and I talked a whole lot about this back when Ted Cruz was running. I had an issue because the invocation of NAFTA against, and that's the way I look at this, against this country and against the working person, that if it hadn't been for Bill Clinton's rise to the presidency and the dethroning of President Bush by Ross Perot, NAFTA would have never happened. You know why? Because the Senate then would not have approved. It was a Democrat-controlled Senate. So they would not have approved with advice and consent NAFTA. So they invented this thing called the Fast Track Authority. And it is not constitutional. It is a procedural thing in the Senate. And when it brings a treaty upon us that is, as Burl said, the Supreme Court has declared the supremacy clause, it will be the supreme law of the land, a treaty. A treaty becomes, that is properly signed, the supreme law of the land. We have fast track authority that has encumbered us with the Pacific Trade Agreement and historically NAFTA. And so all of these things are very worthy of debate and very worthy of passions rising high, because our grandchildren, our children, our grandchildren are going to live in the country that we depart from. And so we're highly motivated. Willow Run Tea Party Caucus is mission-minded and motivated. Burl talked about a motivational speaker that caused him to rise. We have to understand something. If we don't hold government accountable and keep the government size down to where it doesn't become the socialistic blueprint for the world, then we lose. So I appreciate Burl's story, and so just if you folks need to leave, fine. We put this up on YouTube. Mike, how did they get it? You don't know yet? Okay. How do you get to this site?
You just you put Michigan politics on it, and there's like 19 or something.
Okay, you just search for Michigan politics, Dennis Moore.
Or you could put West Willow Tea Party.
West Willow
Tea Party and the date.
And the date, and it'll come up. So if you need to leave, you can hear this. I'm probably only going to do a half an hour, but the research that I have done this week is very important and contextual to what Burl had to say. So if you care to stay, then fine. Three forms of socialism. Why do we have three forms of socialism in the world today? And why is Putin, Trump, and Tillerson fighting these three forms of socialism? You say, why? What? Putin? Fighting socialism? Yes. Because Soviet Union used to be the USSR, and because of capitalism of Ronald Reagan and the policies that he put forward, the USSR was disbanded into the federal Russia. It became Russia. Now Putin is the president of Russia, and ever since he rose to the presidency in Russia, this is not the Soviet socialist anymore. I'm going to show you a video where Putin has actually put out arrest warrants for George Soros, believe it or not, and Rothschilds, any Rothschilds. And there's a reason for this. Because the Rothschild family, the history of them, they funded the Bolshevik Revolution, which started the Marxist movement and socialism in Russia. They overthrew a Christian sovereign, Tsar Nicholas. He was overthrown. Now, what you're going to hear when Mike shows you this, I'll turn these lights out, you're going to hear Putin's statement. Now, this has been synchronized by computer speak, because this people who are running this didn't want to have a person's voice or a person's face. But these are Putin's words. So here we go.
Putin, now in full control of Russia as Prime Minister and now President. Russia issues international arrest warrant for Rothschild and Soros. Vladimir Putin, now in full control of Russia as Prime Minister and now President, wishes to build a strong Christian nation. In a televised Christmas message on January 7, 2008, Putin said, "The Russian Orthodox Church contributes to the promotion of moral values in society. One should not completely draw a line between the culture and the church. Of course, I long in our country, the church is separate from the state. But in the soul and the history of our people, it's all together. It always has been and always will be. Russia will make the United States reflect upon what they allow Rothschild to do to their own country. So when you see protests against Vladimir now, keep in mind that it is probably staged by the Rothschilds trying to control Russia once again." Putin issues arrest warrant for financial terrorist George Soros. Financial terrorist and Hungarian banker, convicted felon George Soros. Russian intelligence has fingered Soros for using cross-collateralized compounded Swedish and Danish foreign currency derivatives for the purpose of an attack on the Russian stock market. Soros' use of these cross-collateralized compounded derivatives utilizing Luxembourg banks violates the terms of the Basel II European Union banking agreement. The thing that should give pause to the heads of state Western is like Putin did in freeing Russia from those who wanted to bring the total economic and social collapse and beat up in jail all those who have tried. Are they influencing Blue Western Putin? The fact is that Putin is loyal to Russia and its people, and never allow anyone, even when he is in command in that nation, to sell out and to let his country into the clutches of the NWO. For this, he ordered to issue an international arrest warrant against George Soros, who has been caught red-handed as he prepared to send financial aid to what is called opposition in Russia, which recently made the streets and dozens of thousands of people telling lies and misinformation cheating during the elections. Now Mr. Soros had little room to continue his dirty games with the speculation that has devastated the entire global financial system, in collaboration Rothschild/Rockefeller and other jackals. Putin's speech, which was officially issued by the Russian authorities. Today it is made public a following statement by the Russian Federation and its Prime Minister Vladimir Putin has been asked for an arrest warrant against the international terrorist finance, the Hungarian currency mogul George Soros. The Russian secret services have found that Soros was using foreign currency derivatives with other aims to start an attack against the Russian currency shares in the market. It should be noted that Soros was using these derivatives with the help of Luxembourg banks, which are forbidden after the contract was made by the EU called Basel II. Both the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and European Union have issued an Interpol red notice, which is not only against the immediate arrest of Soros, but also against the sharks on finance, Bush, Clinton, criminal organization, Mark Rich and his firm, which is located in Switzerland, the commodities brokerage field, which is why the Russian Premier Putin has recently met the chef of the Federal Reserve, making clear that the Russian Federation will not accept that such use is made of people like Soros and Rich to commit criminal acts of the derivatives market and finance, which led to social destabilization across the globe. Putin will be done and start the hunt for these criminals and their accomplices, bankers like Child,
I'm going
Rockefeller.
to ask you to go ahead and cut this.
Disclaimer.
This is a statement by Vladimir Putin about 3 years ago on the Rothschild banking fiascos. And this is what Putin's dog in the race is with Donald Trump. There's a thing called privately owned central banks. This is a problem. This was created by Rothschild. This is why Tsar Nicholas was overthrown by the Bolsheviks. Tsar Nicholas wouldn't stand for privately owned central banks. The Bank of England is a privately owned central bank. The Fed is a privately owned central bank. IMF networks throughout the world privately owned central banks that indebt our countries. Now, to Burrow's question and the Congressman's question about why we have these policies and what they're going to do to us, I'm going to say that we need to get the answer as to why we have policies that allow our production, manufacturing to go out to countries. Countries benefit by this, and we benefit by it, but it is not because we get cheap materials back here. It is because countries will continue to use the US dollar as their currency reserve. And if you don't understand this, there will be no sense in our arguing our points here tonight. Because Congressman makes good points, Burrow has good points, but we need to understand why policy is failing, Democrat and Republican. We need to understand why Donald Trump, as smart as he is, I hope and I pray and I will support everything that he tries to do with Tillerson and Putin. Because Putin is actually trying to overthrow the Rothschild formation of privately owned central banks. Every assassination of a president that this country has had, including Lincoln, McKinley, Kennedy, has to do with a problematic invocation on the American people of privately owned central banks. Now, why is that a problem? Why is the three forms of socialism a problem for our country? Well, one is because the Soviet socialist of the Republic of Russia was a invocation of the Rothschild supported Bolsheviks, who became the USSR. Now, this was because the Tsar Nicholas wouldn't allow central banking to be privately owned. That's called international socialism. The Soviet had different countries that they were bringing into socialism. There's another socialism. The second form is a national socialism. Well, that was very dangerous because every time you get a national socialism, which is what Lenin was not a nationalist, but Stalin was. It was a different, he became a dictator. But who was the most famous nationalist, socialist that the world has ever known? It was Hitler. The Nazi Party, National Socialism. As a matter of fact, one of his biggest enemies was Russia. And why? Have we ever took a little bit of time to try to understand why Russia and Germany were enemies? It is because of the Socialist United Workers of the World Unite. They came through the socialism of the benefited Rothschild banks, and I'll get into why that benefits the banks. Those socialists were coming into Germany to form policies that were detrimental to the National Socialism of Germany, the Nazism, and that's his number one enemy. They say it was Jews. It was Jews, but his main problem was he did not like the socialism of a Soviet. He wanted a national socialism. He wanted to be the dictator of the world, and he wanted to spread his iron-fisted dictator over the entire world. And it was with the help, folks, of Russia, and this is something that complicates in our thinking. We actually were allies with Russia to overthrow Hitler. We got to do some studying. We got to do some history. You know, it's hard for a drywall guy to get into those history books. I don't do real good reading, as they say. It takes work for me. But I have been studying this because a lot counts on it. You know, the third form of socialism is a thing that we have in this country. It is big, fat government giving us everything we need without, as Burl was saying, Burl was living on top of picnic tables. He was covering himself for warmth with cardboard boxes. He was doing this because there was a government that until he was motivated by this motivational speaker, until he reached down and picked up his boots by the bootstraps, he was being literally taken care of, because you know what? He wasn't starving. Those third world nations that I talked to you about, Antigua, where my daughter went with her family for a missionary group, that's third world, man. Those people are starving. And that family's perspective on what this country means is going to do them well for the rest of their life. That is a life-changing event. But Burl, when he was a young man in this country, it wasn't starvation and death that caused him to be motivated. It was a discomfort for where he was. But government, big government, will socially take care of this. Now, our socialism in this government is not a good thing. We should take care of people who need help, but we should never put a gun in the ribs of somebody who has and take it from them to give to somebody who hasn't. And government does that. And the bigger government gets, the bigger their gun gets. And that's why I tried to do, probably badly so, the Atkins diet as opposed to Burl Atkins' name. ATKIN is a diet, and it limits the growth of a person who invokes the diet. It is sugar, a limitation on sugar, and a limitation on carbohydrates. And I think that what we need to do is do that to the nanny sugar daddy government that will motivate us to do nothing. We literally can, see, because government takes the place of God. If we are motivated to do the capitalism that Burl ended up doing and was very successful with, if we end up being motivated by self-help, motivation, and capitalism, and I call that an institution in this country because capitalism it's free markets. In the country, it is not free trade. We had that discussion. This lady was talking very well about free trade not being good. I think Burl said too. A congressman had some thoughts about this. But what we need in this country is free markets within the trade of this country. Free trade on the perimeter for other countries is something that does need to be watchdogged. And I'm going to allow the congressman a question here.
Yeah, well,
Or
the
comment.
question is, it's trying to get facts straight, okay?
Facts.
To give you an example, because I was explaining to the gentleman, and he understood exactly what I was saying out there, because I had a little more chance to explain.
Okay.
This is the problem that I face as a congressman, right?
Okay.
Is the question and the solution to the problem. The problem is, and here's the example, and I tried to explain it to Burl, is if I have a Ford F-150, which is the best truck in the world, made that clear, right? Wouldn't own another truck.
I happen to disagree.
Okay, but yeah.
I got the Chevy.
Welcome to consumer sovereignty.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Consumer sovereignty.
Yes.
Now, understand, I'm the consumer. I buy that truck. Now, whatever the cost of doing business is to produce that truck, Social Security, taxes, products, no matter where they're made, I pay that price. And the Ford Motor Company wants to see a profit. So they're going to have a little profit there, maybe a little more. Okay? So I buy it. I'm the consumer. I'm a United States citizen. All right? If you make that same truck in Mexico, and you make it with another name on it, we'll call it the G150. It's made in Mexico. And if they just send it over here, it might cost me $16,000. Same truck, different name, all right? But the United States comes in, as Burl and some of you say, you know, we're going to make it competitive.
You said some of me?
Well, some of, you know.
Okay.
We're going to make that truck competitive with the Ford F-150 by adding a tax.
I've never advocated that.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, you're going to
I
add
understand
a tariff, or any kind of tax.
Tariff is a tax.
A tariff is, yes, and this is true.
Same thing.
Get to the analogy of the question.
Okay, the question is, I'm going to add $15,000 to the price of that G150 from Mexico, okay? Who pays it?
American.
Consumer always pays the tax.
Exactly. So I'm not really taxing Mexico.
Yeah, but
Mexico won't pay for the bridge.
But they're more
For the wall.
competitive with the American.
Wait.
We're not going to have an open floor debate here, folks.
Right.
We're going to have questions and answers.
The point I'm trying to make is, this is where we have to find the balance. Yes, we want to put American people to work, right? But the problem is that when I buy that, whatever the cost of doing business is, the taxes are rolled into it. So I'm the consumer.
All right, you make a great point.
Mexico doesn't pay the tax.
I got
I
to
do.
control this.
Right?
I'm sorry,
Does it make sense?
I'm going to give Burl, yes it does.
Okay.
But I'm going to give Burl a chance to give a retort to that. And then I want to reaffirm what I was saying is the reason why we have these troubles. We're not going to have an open floor debate.
Right.
Okay, Burl, go ahead with that.
Well,
Okay, the thing I think that you're missing is that Americans in our own country, why should we have to pay all the Social Security taxes from the time of the iron ore that multiplies all the way through the manufacturing process, that adds to the cost of our American-made cars in our own country, that funds our Social Security, our federal government, our national defense. And these products coming in to our country, they're penalizing us as Americans. I hope you understand what I'm saying. We have to pay that in the cost of our products that are manufactured here, but when they come in from Mexico or Japan or South Korea or anywhere else in the world, they're not paying anything into our Social Security or Medicare or National Defense, anything, our social.
no, I understand that perfectly.
Well, why, what is it you don't understand? Why should we as Americans have to pay all these taxes and foreign countries can send their products in for free?
Burl, I understand exactly what you're saying. And
No, you don't, or you wouldn't be arguing with me.
Okay, this is not an argument. This is a position of,
Where's the money?
we're just not going to do this. No, Tim.
There's the answer to your question. Burl said, and he's absolutely right. He said, we're not paying in, they're not paying Social Security.
all this stuff.
But when
No, he
you,
doesn't
Hey,
understand.
hang on, come
You
back
do
over
not
here.
understand.
Well, hang on.
You explain.
Okay,
It's not a question.
here's the thing though, we gave the whole first part of this hour to the differences, and I appreciate the passion. But
wait, don't, no, this is not fair, let me explain. He's
Well, how-
absolutely right.
Okay.
There's no argument. He's absolutely right.
Okay.
The question I asked was the solution to the problem. Because if you
I have
add a tax
I
to
see.
make up for the Social Security and all the taxes we pay, who pays those taxes?
Have we ever heard, listen to me folks, listen to me, allow me to say this, please, allow me to say this. Congressman's point's excellent. Have we ever heard of Smoot-Hollings? Smoot-Hollings.
Yes.
Whoever hasn't heard of that needs to know what it is. It's a congressional dictate that put a tax on imports. It caused the Great Depression. Now,
Absolutely disagree.
okay, Burl disagrees with me. He said we ought to sit down and have dinner sometime, and I'm a drywall guy. I'll get an education.
Absolutely.
Okay, but Burl, come here.
okay.
But here's what I'm saying. If, we have a disagreement about whether or not it caused the Great Depression. There was other factors, but Smoot-Hollings did tax imports. Now, here,
They
it
should be
certainly did.
taxed.
Well, I'm not saying it shouldn't. Believe me, I'm not saying it shouldn't. But what I'm saying is, if Donald Trump does a 10%, which is what he was talking about, at the border for all products, I think we have a problem. But if he does the thing that Burl is talking about, I think it may be a solution, but it's all in how it's implemented. Because reciprocity that Burl talks about is a good thing. But the bigger problem that I see, folks, because I'm your director and I do come here every Friday night, some of you don't, and I'm allowing this discussion, and that's great, I'm glad to have you here. The real problem we have in this country is the fact that we will force other countries to continue to use our currency as their currency reserve through the petrodollar bargain that is getting ready to fail. This is why Donald Trump and Putin and Tillerson have this bromance. I'm not so sure that it's going to work. I pray to God that it does. Because we are not going to continue to enfranchise Mexico to keep doing what they do with bad policies that Burl's talking about, and not be able to fund our taxes here by bringing those cars back in simply because we want them not to dump the US dollar as their currency reserve. This is what happened in Iraq. I talk about it all the time.
Yes.
I'm sorry for the segue, but I'm motivated, mission-minded, and we have to understand this as a country. I appreciate the differences of these two great men. But we have to understand that the central banks, the independent central banks, and Rothschild himself, and Putin's perspective on Rothschild is very important to my grandchildren, so I take this personal. It is a privately controlled central bank that causes all bad things in policy, and they are bought and paid for, not only through the lobby of lucre, buying congressmen, and I'm going to tell you something. There's a reason Kerry Bentivolio, congressman, is a former congressman. And I'm going to tell you this. The reason is he couldn't be bought. The reason is he has moral standards where they couldn't put a woman in front of him and compromise him. And he certainly, they did try. They did try. And I understand this. So I am what they call pissed off. And I don't use the language very often, but it is effective to understand something. There's a thing in the swamp pit of Washington that I don't know if Donald Trump is going to deal with, to be honest with you. The trade policies that Burl talks about, very important. Congressman Bentivolio's position on them is very important. But if we don't get to the problem of our mercenarying our military to force other countries such as Iraq, Libya, and now Syria, to not dump the US dollar, because all of those did that. And they were going to take the profits from the petrodollar, which is what the Kissinger Agreement was in 1973. They would purchase our debt, folks. They would purchase our debt with the treasury bills. That was part of the bargain. When Saddam Hussein said, I'm not going to do it anymore, we took care of that. Burl, I'm sorry for the passion that I trumped you with, so to speak. But it's necessary that this fellow hears, and it's necessary that Congressman Bentivolio hears what we talk about the Willow Run Tea Party problems. Sometimes people make a mistake to think that they're the only reason what they have to say that I have them here. I want them to hear what our mission is, and I know you got to go. Yeah. So I'm going to let you.
Okay, I'll be very brief again. I'm honored to be here. But Smoot-Hawley had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the Great Depression. I'm sorry to disagree with you. No, let me finish, and I'm out of here. Smoot-Hawley, the Great Depression was started in October in 1929. Smoot-Hawley wasn't even passed till 10 months later in July, or I think it was the end of July. It had nothing to do. What had to do with it is margin call, and it's all in my book. I explain all this stuff to you. Derivatives, you could take 10%, and it's called margins and that. It's
Get Burl's book. I haven't got it.
But anyway, to make a long story short, every historian of that age, they didn't invent this red herring, if you will, until the 1940s. And they blamed it on tariffs. No, not one economist. It was, the Depression started with a market crash. 5,000, and these tariffs that Dennis was talking about, I love this guy, I respect him, but the problem is it was on some farm products. It had, you can't blame some marginal tariffs on farm imports to the United States for a 46% drop in our GNP, gross national product. 5,000 banks didn't close and go bankrupt because of some small import tariffs on agricultural products coming into our country. And let me tell you this too, because I've studied this. I know what I'm talking about. 2/3 of all the drop in imports came after before the Smoot-Hawley tax tariff was even implemented from 1930 to 1933. I know this stuff. It's you tell the same lie over and over again, and people believe it after a while.
I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
Let me say this.
I could be deficient in information, but I'm not lying.
Let me say this. Let me close with one last thing. And
Now you sound like Chuck.
I'm serious. Guess what? The second law passed by the United States Congress and signed by our founding father, President Washington, was the tariff tax. You check history. You read history.
That's true.
You guys read this. This is true. And that was the foundation that brought us from 13 agricultural colonial colonies into the most powerful country in the history of the world, with the highest standard of living in the history of the world. And we kept that for almost 200 years, and that's how we became the most powerful country in the history of the world. And now it's being taken away from us.
No, it's being given away.
You got it. That's my
It's being given
No,
away.
Secure blessings
It's
of
been
liberty
given
to
away.
ourselves
You
and
can
our
call it given,
prosperity.
taken away, but we got to start fighting back. This is it.
Secure
I'm
the
agreeing
blessings
with
of
that.
liberty.
It's been
And
given
I
away.
gotta tell you something. When I was a kid, my daddy took me out to the woodshed a couple times. This is reminiscent of when my daddy took me out to the woodshed. I just got spanked. But I'm gonna tell you, as Burl leaves, what he says is so derivatives, and even Putin was talking about why derivatives are bad. I mean, if you get on that site and you look at those words, he was talking about what Soros is doing with derivatives. But what I'm saying about Smoot-Hawley, and I'll defend myself a little bit, probably I'll do it as Burl leaves, so he'll come back and correct me.
I'll come back anytime.
I love you, Burl. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Burl. Thank you. This is what makes America great, because you know what? He didn't pull a gun out because we have some small disagreement. What we're going to do is educate ourselves. Now, I'm going to educate myself. But I'm going to tell you that what I believe about Smoot-Hawley is it is a fact what Burroughs said. The derivatives that we have over $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities as far as derivatives go. It is going to cause the collapse of this country, along with the precipitation of the petrodollar bargain collapsing. But I will say that Smoot-Hawley, which I disagree here with Burl, and he's educated, and I'm not. So I could be wrong. But Smoot-Hawley didn't allow for this country to recover as fast as it could have. It extended the bad policies of those derivatives. Derivatives are very bad. And I'm going to tell you something. My point about Rothschild and privately owned central banks, they operate on derivatives. George Soros is Mr. Derivative King. And they will, as Jefferson said, we will wake up one day and find that the country that surrounds our children has been taken away. Now, I reworded that a little bit, but Jefferson was talking about privately owned central banks. He was talking about Rothschild. He was talking about the reason that Abraham Lincoln was killed because of the greenback. John Kennedy was killed because he took the Federal Reserve, set it aside with Executive Order 11110, and he created a new currency called the U.S. note. And here's what happens with that. We don't have a debt to pay interest on anymore, because by executive order he declared that the silver that we had was equal to the debt. And that was what got him killed, because he was assassinated by the cartel of international bankers who he just fired. He did what Donald Trump does on his TV show. You're fired. And that's what we need to do. And it's like castor oil. It's going to taste bad, but it's going to be good for us. But folks, I love the passion here. And we'll take some questions and answers, because that's what we're good at. But we're not going to get into an open floor debate. I'll give you every answer I can, and so Tim's been waiting, and so Tim, speak loudly.
Dennis, does this have to do with, because when you think of history of the U.S., it's always on the back of the poor, the lower middle class, and the middle class. Does this have to do with, particularly, Bill Clinton said to my face he wasn't going to pass NAFTA, and does this have to do with the preamble?
Well, he lied to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Provide for the
Here's the
common
thing.
defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves
You seem
and our
surprised to go ahead and lie
posterity.
to you. I don't.
And it's the American dream that was taken away from the poor, the lower middle
Okay, what's your
class.
question, Tim? You think you should?
Is this what it's all about, the preamble?
Is
Not abiding by the preamble?
No, it's not what it's all about.
Wait,
What it's all about is socialism using the little man. My father always used to say that the Democrats are for the little man. And back in the day they were. But since progressive socialism has taken over and invaded the Democrat Party like cancer does to a body, since this has happened, Congressman, I'm going to ask that conversation to be taken out. Congressman Bentivolio, this conversation is not respectful to the rest of the people who are hearing this, so please take it out. I mean, it's hard for me to concentrate on what I'm saying. I don't generally allow that, and I'm very apologetic to the fact that I had to interrupt.
She didn't know.
No, she didn't know, and that's all right.
She's new to the executive committee. She
That's
didn't know
wonderful.
the rules.
I love it. Now, the thing, what was I talking about? See, that's what happened. The little man. The little man. The reason the socialism has rescued and entered in on behalf of the little man is because that the Rothschild empire of banking funds both sides of wars, folks. And this is what we got to understand. We have to understand this. We really do. Because the United States policies of forcing our currency in foreign countries that will continue to use our dollar, the greenback, so to speak. It's not greenback anymore, although it has a greenback. But Lincoln was killed and it was changed back to a privately owned central bank. And this is what the Burr-Hamilton debate was all about. This is what the corrupt bargain was all about. This was a debate as to whether or not banks should be state banks. You know, when you go to the Chelsea State Bank, and we think that that is not a national bank, but it is national in flavor, because it's a privately owned central bank. Even though if we went to a true state bank, we would solve these problems. We would take the Rothschild noose that's around our neck, and I'm going to continue to use that word. It is a new world order. It is a new order of the world that the Rothschild family is implementing on this country. It is why we're having these debates. It is why we need to be together as Democrats and Republicans. This is not a political partisan issue. This is an American issue. That's why I had the flag waving and Ray Charles singing America. Because there is an answer to this. And I think Donald Trump has it if we will gather around him and support this notion of Putin really having understood the issue of Rothschilds and the privately owned central banks, such as the Fed. We need not to audit the Fed. We need to remove the Fed. We need to not audit the United Nations. We need to remove the United Nations. We need a centrally owned bank, central to the states, that will rise and fall on their own merits. Do you know what fractional reserve banking is? If you've been to many seminars with a creature on Jekyll Island, you will understand that these privately owned central banks don't have to have money to loan it. But they charge us interest for loaning us thin air. And why does Rothschild want to foment wars all over the country? Is to keep this ruse from being discovered and understood. But there's a thing that's getting in the way. It's called abiotic oil. We talk about it all the time. And there's a lot of folks that are not here now. They're not going to hear about this. This is the reason Putin is threatened by a thing called the failure of that petrodollar. The reason that these countries are discovering, and so you know where Baku is? That is on the Caspian Sea. They have more oil there than they know what to do with. There's more oil across the whole world than they know what to do with, but they can't tell you about it because it's abiotic and it's self-replenishing. And if that comes to light, and actually any nation produces it, it's just like air. You can't charge to breathe it, unless you're Al Gore. But here's the thing. Abiotic oil is a threat to the petrodollar. Now, Putin has understood, because he has rescinded the socialism of Russia. You heard it. You heard his statement. The Greek Orthodox Church and the Christian nature of his people. Are we going to, as a country, not listen to what comments are being made by our leaders? Donald Trump is not for Rothschild banking. Donald Trump is going to send Tillerson to Putin to try and do a fix of this petrodollar bargain, folks. And God help this country, because I don't think it gets done. I support it. I want it to happen. I want Tillerson to be approved by the Senate. Don't think he will be. I hope he is. Because if he is not, then I think Romney is the second choice. And the only reason Donald Trump would have Romney in there is because he anticipates dollar collapse. And Romney's good at that. Everybody knows he took criticism in the election because Mitt Romney knew how to navigate through bankruptcy with corporations. Should he have to navigate through the bankruptcy and the default of the American dollar and the U.S. government, we better know what the 10 circles of 10 are that I've been talking about. We better know what the Great Depression was, no matter what caused it, because we need to support each other. Because I think we're going to go through this time. There's not a lot of people that disagree with this. Only, you know the people that disagree with it? The media, who are Rothschild installed. This is something too, a little bit of study would help. You're going to take my word for it, but right now you're going to go out and study this. The media is socialist and Marxist in nature because Rothschild has fomented and funded the notion of Marxism and communism to be able to oppose it with capitalism. It's called the Hegel doctrine. It's thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You create a problem and have an answer so that the only thing that they can do is come to you for the answer. That's why I say there's no money in peace. We will never have peace in this country, in this world, until we understand what the Rothschild Empire has done. It caused the War of 1812. The Bank of England wanted to reclaim the colonies. The reason that Francis Scott Key penned the words that he did, and I have talked about so many times in this country, or in this caucus, is because that the Bank of England, a privately owned central bank, wanted to reclaim the colonies, by which the international bankers came to New York and wanted to safeguard their empire. That's why New York is called the Empire State. That's why we have an Empire State Building. And what do you think safeguarded that for the international banksters, I like to call them? And I kind of always am hesitant to say the word Jew in front of that because they're not really Jews. They claim to be, but they're what's called Khazar Jews. They're Jews but not by heritage, by conversion. The Khazars came from the Caucasus area, where Baku is, by the way. And the Rothschild banksterism is causing us real trouble because it only wants to foment the action of war so it can supply both sides. Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex, beware of it. We'll take a question.
Another thing that's explained, as you just started to talk about it, explained by the Rothschild banking, is that they want to start this Cold War again to feed the military-industrial complex.
Oh my.
How they've gone off from McCain right now and Lindsey Graham to talk against Putin.
Yeah.
It's all part of their
and listen,
keep
folks,
everything divided.
the thing I talked about influencing congressmen with not only pedophilia, but money sometimes, to get a vote that they ordinarily wouldn't vote for. We're coming, I mean, God bless Lindsey Graham, I'm not saying about him. But why doesn't a smart fellow like him understand the history of the Rothschild banking institutions?
He's getting money from them.
He's getting money from them. That's the lobby of lucre. That's what I call the lobby of lucre. Lucre is a very bad context in the Bible. If congressmen are accepting money for their vote, that's evil. If congressmen have been compromised by pedophilia, such as this Jeffrey Epstein character has been known to provide, this is why Bentivolio, Congressman Bentivolio, former congressman, that's the reason he's former. They couldn't find a crack in his armor. Oh, and they did try. And he wasn't going to deliver the Boehner vote that John Boehner needed from him. And he was booted. Believe me, he was booted. Now this men's club that they have in Washington is a very big danger to the existence of the United States of America being free. Because the international banksters, who are the Rothschild family, and the Rockefellers working on one end and they're working on another, and they're both becoming rich over the battles. Every single war this country has fought since the First World War has been instituted by the privately owned banks that have been controlled by Rothschilds.
Both sides.
Both sides of the war. That's why there will never be any money made in peace. That's why the military-industrial complex, and believe me folks, I understand what I'm doing here. I'm placing myself at risk. Because if ever I have a voice that it will become influential enough to where this gets repeated and reported, look out for Dennis. But I'm passionate enough for my grandchildren to put this on the line. And no matter what avenue that this message gets out, we have to repeat it. You take it out. Don't be afraid to talk about the Rothschild banking institutions, because they are what we're fighting against. They are what we defeated as a Tea Party nation. We defeated Rothschild with giving the Republican Party every seat that they asked for. And what did they do for us? Lindsey Graham, John Boehner, oh my goodness, Dennis Hastert. He was a pedophile, a known pedophile, a guy with my name, Dennis Hastert. He was the leader of the House Speaker. How could he arrive so high a level in government with having a history such as he had? How, folks, how? There's a cover-up. There's a payoff. And will we continue to just be quiet about it? I don't think so. Because you people keep coming here, in spite of the fact that your director is diminished in delivery and content sometimes. Sometimes I can't even remember what I'm talking about. Mark, go ahead behind you.
Well, one other point to make about all these, the workings of the international banksters is, I think I've heard from David Rockefeller himself that
There's
the
no...
world is overpopulated, and they are moving to decimate the population.
They want to
We
start
gotta watch out
killing
for that as
people.
well.
Oh.
When
Have you noticed that?
yeah, oh, absolutely, that's what wars do. Rothschild made a statement and Rockefeller agreed. There's no competition. Competition is evil. There's no money to be made with competition. That's when the Rockefeller oil industry and the Rothschild privately owned banker Soviet-type communist Marxist industry, that's when they decided to go into coalition with each other. So what they did is stop the production of oil in the Baku region of the Caspian Sea, which is abiotic oil, folks. It's abiotic oil. Abiotic oil, if you read my piece, you will understand that it's non-fossil. Up until until Vladimir Putin became the president of Russia, nobody knew anything about abiotic oil. We will still deny it today, and I will be called, well, I have been called, an idiot by some, because I say oil replenishes itself. And we will mercenary our military when somebody refuses to use the US dollar to sell their oil, and we will go put our military down their throat and reestablish the petrodollar bargain to where they can purchase our debt. Now the reason I talk about the third branch of socialism is because there is only one reason that we have such the debt that we get $20 trillion. I said last week, if you take $1 trillion, Tim, I'll get to you. If you take $1 trillion, $100 bills, brand new and crisp, and stack them up on top of each other, 1 trillion of that 20, only $1 trillion would reach halfway to the moon and halfway back. $1 trillion. We owe 20 trillion in debt. We cannot even afford, folks, the interest on that debt. That's why this Federal Reserve, a private bank, will not raise the interest. Because if we raise the interest, we have to pay China interest on the treasury bills they're holding. Do you remember the petrodollar bargain? They have to purchase our treasury bills. What does that do? That puts a credit card, is the same as putting a credit card in your pocket and having no consequence to spending. Not even interest. Because you're going to have somebody that is going to take care of that debt. The reason we have $20 trillion in debt is because countries buy it. They are forced to buy it. Our military is mercenary and forces countries to continue to buy our debt. And this is because of Republicans and Democrats. It's because of social spending. That's the third arm of socialism. We've become a socialist country who is capitalist in nature. This is a contradiction because we like capitalism, but what I like is capitalism. I like people, free markets within the borders of this country. I'm a nationalist. I am a nationalist, and I'm white, which I'll admit that I'm a white nationalist. But if you want to interpret that as me being prejudiced, you've made a mistake. Now, that's only where I'll go. I will not defend my view on my fellow Americans, no matter what color they are, by you or whoever calling me a white nationalist, because I am white and I am a nationalist, but I am not dictatorial. I am not a Hitler like Donald Trump is being accused to be by this Marxist left socialist movement, because he's getting in the way of privately owned international banks that are central to the United States. Donald Trump is doing this. This is why I'm praying for success. Didn't like him in the primaries, everybody knows it. But when he got the nomination, I am working as hard as I can do for this fellow. Because he understands what is at risk. Putin understands what is at risk. I think Putin has decided to side with this country now because we have a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. This country needs to rebel against Rothschild independent banking.
Amen.
Independently owned banking. This is going to happen. I'll give you a question. Go ahead.
Why don't they do an audit on the gold? Why don't we go back on the gold standard?
Because it wouldn't take very long. Oh, wait a minute. It wouldn't take long to count it. We don't have any. But this is a mistake of understanding.
All these countries gold.
Yeah, you're right. That's why Nixon said he canceled the convertibility of gold. That's when we established the petrodollar, of having oil back the dollar instead of gold. The Rothschilds would really want, and listen, you understand Watergate?
Yeah.
Okay, do you really? The Rothschilds didn't like Richard Nixon because he took us off of the gold standard. The Rothschilds actually want the gold standard because it is their way for the privately owned central banks in the world to manipulate these countries through the IMF. Rothschilds, what we need is silver. We need a U.S. dollar backed by silver. The red seal dollars. That's what got John Kennedy killed. It's really what got John Kennedy killed. It's what got Abraham Lincoln killed. It is what got all the presidents who've been assassinated killed, is because they wanted to get us off of Jefferson said it, a privately owned central bank will consume the country you wake up to and will take your children's inheritance. I continue not to give you exact quotes, but that's what he was talking about. Jim?
A light went on about 10 minutes ago when we were talking about the Rothschilds, and I just want to tell me if I'm right in understanding this. I'm thinking, Tony DeMott and the Libertarian Party and how they've supported Congressman Ron Paul and Senator Rand Paul,
yes,
and the isolationism of the United States. Is their view the view to protect the United States from the New World Order by isolationism?
The Libertarian view, Tony DeMott, Rand Paul, former Senator Ron Paul, are 100% correct.
Okay.
But what I think we make a misjudgment on with the Libertarian Party is how to implement the correction. They are correct. Ron Paul is very correct. But here's the advent of an abiotic oil that wasn't so 20 years ago. The understanding of this oil, and please allow me, those of you who heard this joke, for me to say it again, because it's so important to the context of why abiotic oil and backing a U.S. dollar to the abiotic oil is a fantasy and a fraud, and it has to be fixed. So this fella, he dies, and he wants to go to heaven, and he wants to take his earthly goods. So he goes to St. Peter at the Golden Gate, and he says, St. Peter, I'd like to get in. I lived a pretty good life, and look at what I got. He has a bag full of gold. St. Peter looks at the gold, and he says, well, I'm sorry, sir, that doesn't get you into heaven. And this is not biblically correct, but it's for the analogy that I say it. So the guy begged. He said, listen, it's really important that I get into heaven. It is for everybody. So he said, he begged with St. Peter. St. Peter made this exception, which he never would. He says, well, okay, because you are so sincere, I'm going to let you in. So he opens the golden gates, and this fellow carries his bag of gold, and he's walking down this path, and he sees a fellow coming. He sees a saint coming down the road. And this old boy, gold's pretty heavy. And so he's got a bag of it. His whole life earnings is in this bag. And he's walking toward this fellow, and this fellow says, this saint says, man, why are you so burdened in heaven? What in the world is in that bag of burden? And he says, oh my, let me show you. Let me show you what I have. And he opened up that bag, and he showed the saint, and the saint says to him, when he saw it, he says, wow, why are you belaboring so much over pavement? The streets of gold are made of pavement because gold is plentiful, even the golden gates. When something becomes plentiful, it becomes valueless. Of course, air is plentiful, and if we don't breathe air, it's pretty bad for us, so air is valuable. But as far as being free, able to monetize air, it's very hard to do. Ask Al Gore. As far as propping up the price of gold, as long as it's rare, it's worth a lot of money. And that's the Rothschild fiasco that they placed on the banking system. The fractional reserve banking that they are forcing on countries through the IMF and the Fed. The libertarians are right about this. But the problem here is, with the advent of the understanding of abiotic oil, we have made oil valueless. Ergo the joke about heaven and gold. Because if there's oil everywhere, the price of oil, and we saw it a year ago, we saw the price of oil go way down. A gallon of gas, in some places in this country, was under $1 a gallon. Under $1 a gallon, because oil was less than $50, down around $40. Why would abiotic oil cause the price of oil to go down? And what's the consequence of that to nations, to militaries, to the military-industrial complex? What's the consequence? It causes our economy to collapse. It causes our economy to collapse because we are based on a petrodollar value of the dollar. And petroleum is everywhere. And that's why we will keep other OPEC nations who are buying our treasury bills with the profits. When they stop doing that, we will attack them. You see, because it wasn't because he had weapons of mass destruction. We knew he had weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt. And when I see either congressman, it makes me angry, say that we were wrong, that he had weapons. We knew he had them. George Bush, Daddy, sold them to him in the battle against Iran because Iran dumped the US dollar. Okay? With the Shah. Okay? This is why they had the Iranian Revolution of Islamic. Now you have an Islamic Republic of Iran right now. Before it was an iron-fisted dictator of the Shah that controlled Iran because of oil. I don't know if we should take the hiring freeze off of iron-fisted dictators. I don't think that's the right thing to do. But I think the right thing for us to do is to understand what abiotic oil is going to do to this petrodollar that Jewish internationalist, banker-supported Henry Kissinger brought on this country. I'm sorry you want to call me an anti-Semitic, you can, but you really need to know how I love Israel and the Jewish nation. You need to understand that before you call me anti-Semitic. There is a problem in this country, and it's going to affect my grandchildren, and I'm angry. Unless we come to understand what abiotic oil is going to do to the investment of international bankers in oil, and that's why that Putin, we've got to make this alliance with the Federation of Russia right now. It is no longer the socialist USSR. It's not back to the USSR like it used to be. There is, Mitt Romney was right when he said Russia is our largest geopolitical enemy. Understand this. It's very important. I think Mitt Romney understands it to a T. So does Tillerson, so does Trump. That's why Mitt Romney came into council with Trump. If anybody understands, they weren't very good friends in the primary. I like Mitt Romney, and I love to say that Mitt Romney's, I say, a personal friend of mine. He may not say that I'm a personal friend of his, but I guarantee you, Mitt Romney knows who I am. And I'm proud of that. Because I think what Trump did with Mitt Romney is, come on in, Mitt, let's see what we're going to have to do. We're going to try to get Tillerson in as Secretary of State. It's going to be hard to get him by the Senate. But we have to find this new ground with Russia because we have a common interest. That common interest now is against the Islamic terrorism of ISIS. Oh boy, we don't have enough time. Well, what time is
It's
it?
11:20.
Oh my goodness, I'm
Keep
so
on
sorry.
going, Dennis. Keep on going.
I'm so sorry. Sometimes
I
I
have to cut this
I
off.
lose track. I need to end this. We need to resume. I'm going to finish this thought. What was the thought? That happens sometimes.
ISIS.
ISIS. Why did we fund ISIS through
Because
Gaddafi?
Obama gave it to him.
It wasn't okay. I really have to. I don't have time. Obama did give it to him, but why the policy? It's just like why the policy of sending corporations out. There's a reason that Hillary Clinton and Benghazi, a few years ago, I said there's 3 important things this caucus will be focusing on. We've been here 8 years, folks. I said the 3 important things that will always come back to is Benghazi, the second one is Benghazi, and the third one is Benghazi. Now when you say Obama gave, through Hillary Clinton, ISIS, the support he did, well, why? Why? Because I'll tell you right now, if we had George Bush as president, he would have done this too. So we're trying to blame the blame on the president that we don't like. But if George Bush had been there, he would have been trying to support the petrodollar also, because I'm telling you right now, that's why we supported ISIS. Because ISIS is being used as a tool, badly so, we shouldn't have had Benghazi, but to transfer money and weapons to a revolution against Assad, who has made an alliance, which I think Russia now is going to be willing to break because of Donald Trump. Hopefully I read these tea leaves right. But they wanted them to overthrow Assad and reinstitute, folks understand this, to reinstitute the issuance of their sale of oil in US dollars because Syria has not been doing that for a long time. I think what you're going to see, and then I'm going to shut up and take maybe 3 questions so I can let you folks leave. I think what we're going to see is an association between Putin, Tillerson, if we can get him through, or even Romney if we can't. We're going to see an association that protects the petrodollar. This is why ISIS has been funded. This is why the Wahhabism of Saudi Arabia has been a bed-friendly person. We have gotten in bed with our enemies. The United States, through Al-Qaeda, bin Laden, that is Wahhabism. We actually funded them in the first Afghanistan war in order to stop that Russian abiotic oil. You see, because way back then, Russia was trying to pipeline that oil to China through Afghanistan, and we couldn't have it because Russia then wasn't using dollars to sell their oil. And Russia knew then, back in the 40s, Russia knew that they had this Baku region of abiotic oil, deep well drilling, 50,000 feet, 45,000 feet, they're drilling down the oil. Every scientist you will ever want to talk to will confirm what I'm saying. Never has there been a fossil going deeper than 13 to 15,000 feet. What in the world is Russia doing? Who do they think they are drilling 50,000 feet hitting oil and causing all of this mischief in the world? But you know who's causing the mischief? Rothschilds. Because Rothschilds are being empired by the battle, by the war. We need to understand, and it's so important, folks, that we need to support Donald Trump. It is people who surround him. This is not right or left, Democrat or Republican. This is America who needs to be made great again by good policies. Donald Trump can't do this alone. We need to have a friendly attitude towards supporting this appointment of Tillerson, although I don't like him. I saw a little old lady, Tim, I'm sorry, I got to finish the thought, in McDonald's the other day, and she was a grandmother, and she was so politically aware. What she said was, this Tillerson guy, he's Exxon Oil, the big oil companies want to take over. Donald Trump is evil, bad. You know what, I didn't get on a podium right there and tell you folks, tell her what I say here, because I love that lady. That lady has been misled with understanding. The Rothschild banking cabal is very good with the media. They fund the media. George Soros is funding this media. Putin, folks, is not my hero. He was a very bad guy, but now it's a different story in Russia. We need to allow Donald Trump enough rope to where he doesn't hang himself, but enough rope to where he can put the Rothschild influence of the privately owned central banks, hang them, or we, as Ben Franklin said, will hang together. If we don't stand together, we'll hang alone. I think that's what I said. Okay, questions now. Questions now. I'm going to take maybe 2 or 3, as long as you folks are willing to stay. I'm sorry I went so late. I usually, I kind of do.
I got a double question and it's quick.
Oh, well, it better be.
The first is, was it true that Muammar Gaddafi went off the dollar and then quickly got back on the dollar, but he made him angry, so they killed him anyway? And 2, the Deep Horizon British Petroleum oil well in the Gulf of Mexico, was that a cover-up? Was that avionic?
It was avionic oil. All you got to do, it wasn't a spew. It wasn't a spill. It was a spew. All oil is avionic oil.
What about Gaddafi?
But to answer the BP question, that drill was Deep Horizon oil rig. It drilled deep. That went down so deep. They got so much oil pressure. There's more oil under the Gulf of Mexico than there is water on top of the Gulf of Mexico.
Europe produces oil like we produce blood.
It is unbelievable. And if what this gentleman says, and I forgot your name, I'm sorry. David. If what David says is true, and if he had been here through our caucuses through about 4 years, he would have heard that we talk about this all the time. It is true. And if it is true, the consequence is a failed U.S. dollar, because we cannot continue to bring the Johnnies who come marching home. And my salute to the congressman, because he went, and he went because his country called, and he went 3 wars because his country called. He didn't have to understand all of this, and neither did John Tomlinson, who came home different, who sat on top of the weapons of mass destruction and was ordered to blow them up. We had him here, and I speak about him all the time. He's the Johnnies who comes marching home. And we have used the salacious appetite of congressmen, these people who have been named in neocons. They are not neocon by nature. They have been manipulated to give a vote. Hillary Clinton was one. What motivated her to authorize the Iraq War? It wasn't money. It was the salacious appetite of Bill Clinton, who was, and many other Republicans, Democrats, who had, this man wasn't. This man wouldn't do it, and that's why he's not in Washington right now. The pedophile ring of JonBenet Ramsey, the ring that was even then for the JonBenet, and I titled one of my messages, When Johnny Comes Marching Home and JonBenet Ramsey. What do they have in common? Because JonBenet Ramsey, with the pedophile compromising of congressmen, get our military to be mercenary to go support this notion of a illegal, unlawful banking conspiracy of Henry Kissinger and George Soros and Rockefeller. And we get those votes to go to war. The War Powers Act is unconstitutional. We should never have given the president the right, and this is why the libertarians are right here. The Patriot Act.
What about Gaddafi?
Gaddafi jumped the dollar. He was going to go back on it, but it was a good idea for them to take him out because they could fund through his adversaries. They could fund ISIS, and the Muslim Brotherhood became what Syria. General Valley was over there helping out with the Free Syria Army, which they didn't want. Rothschilds didn't want Syria to be freed so the people of Syria could rule. What Rothschilds wanted was Syria to be freed, even if we had to use ISIS, so that we could put a dictator there who would dictate the support of petrodollar oil. Okay, I've got to get to questions. Let's see. Go ahead, Joseph.
Just to give a little perspective to this whole thing. Major corporations in this world are offshore. There's big pharma, big oil, big insurance, big agriculture, and basically big banking. And they control everything. And they have gotten under their umbrella almost all the nations in this globe.
That's right.
Except Russia, China, the BRIC nations,
Yeah.
and Iran. So what happened is, it doesn't matter how much ambiotic oil there is, it still takes someone to drill it and pump it out, put it in a barrel and sell it. And we started producing so much oil that, and we can do it for $20 a barrel, so can the Saudis. That was designed to break the economy of Russia, Iran, and the BRIC nations from starting their own currency. And that was all done by the, this, if you look at the interlocking...
Okay, I've got to stop you and say the consequence of allowing these nations to produce this oil, and I'll come back to you. I don't want to interrupt you, but there's something you got to understand here. The equation that you're leaving out when you say that we can drill our own oil and every nation can't, it can go to $20 a barrel and it doesn't hurt us. No, it can't. It will hurt us. Here's why. The petrodollar bargain, the contract was that these countries who made high profits on big price oil would take those profits and purchase our debt, which we created with the third arm of socialism in this country. The nanny government. The reason I use the Atkins diet as they laugh, it wasn't so good, but if we make government smaller, we will make debt smaller. But we will never make government smaller under the Rothschild notion of independent central banking. Because socialism will continue to give things for free and take from people who earn them and give them things
Other
free.
countries
That's
stop
what's
buying our debt.
Yeah.
Now the Federal Reserve...
If they stop buying our debt, the petrodollar, our dollar collapses. We can't afford $20 trillion.
Monetizing like that.
We will monetize it until we collapse. This is a real problem. And I don't tell you the truth. I'm identifying what I see as a problem. I don't know if I have the answer. I'm going to give Congressman Mitchell.
Well, I just wanted to make a statement here. And,
Please
I
laugh.
guess earlier, you guys don't really didn't understand me, and that's okay. But the point I was trying to get to is, in a direct way, is and the reason I'm here today, because after reading his book, and I'm not going to say any more or criticize it because he's not here to defend himself. But,
Okay.
and I'm a big fan. I voted for Donald Trump. And but when he starts talking about tariffs and that kind of thing, it kind of scares me.
Me too. I kind of disagree with Earl about a tariff at the border.
Yeah, I taught history for 15 years in both public and private school, U.S. history. And one of the things that you got to watch out for is when the product or when the natural resources. You're a drywaller, right?
Yeah. Well, I was.
Where do we get our drywall now?
China. You realize they float it across the ocean?
Yeah.
And it's cheaper to buy from China.
And so what happened to U.S. gypsum?
Let me tell you, U.S. gypsum is sort of out of business, but the China you brought this up.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Go.
The China drywall, because I'm an expert in this field, I know this, that they used in Florida, they used China drywall in Florida and in Texas. Every single copper pipe that they put in those houses in Florida and in Texas had to be removed. You know why? The materials that they used in the gypsum deteriorated copper. So they had to go to plastic lines. That's where the PEX industry came into play. So we still use China drywall. We use other forms.
So here's the thing.
Quickly, we got to close.
Yes.
Chase us out of here.
If I was to put a tariff tax.
You're right, I get it, and we get it. Mexico will not pay for the wall, the consumer will if he puts a tariff at the border. Corporations do not pay taxes, consumers pay taxes. So that's what Congressman is talking about, but I'm caught in the middle, I agree with both sides here. Because here's what's going to happen. I believe in reciprocity, and that's what Burl is saying. Reciprocity is, if you're going to hit me, I'm going to hit you back. That's Donald Trump. He said it all the time. So, yeah, we need to close, folks. Okay.
Poor man's head is hard.
Joe, go ahead. As long as you're, I just feel guilty. As long as you don't care, I don't care. Go ahead, Joe.
So about the oil. with all these dinosaurs swimming in tar pits.
Sinclair Oil. Here's what happened. See, I told you we'd get a laugh out of Joe. If abiotic oil is sourced as we say it is, it migrates upward. Through what? Petroleum. What is petrol? Rock. Rock is porous, limestone. It elevates up. When it comes through a cavity made by Dino, who died and created this fossil fuel marker of a cavity, this petroleum coming up, abiotic oil, takes the markers of abiotic or of fossil fuels. And what happens is scientists read those fossil markers and they say, fossil fuel, we're running out. It'll never run out. Joe, to answer your question?
But I got a follow-up.
Quickly.
And I wanted Kerry to hear this.
He's not going to hear it, he's talking. Go ahead, Joe.
Now, I don't claim to know what's in Donald Trump's head. You know, if I know anything about him, he's the most unpredictable candidate I've ever seen.
That's part of his charm.
But regarding your controversy with Burl Atkins, might I suggest that Donald Trump is hoping with just the mere threat of these tariffs that these other countries will take a step back and say, okay, we'll release our tariffs. And
well, it might happen, but we can't continue with the tariff and taxing
Well, let me
issue.
explain.
It's got to be quick, Congressman.
Yeah.
It's got to be
The
quick.
only solution to the problem, the only solution, and I've looked at both sides of this with some of the greatest minds in the country. And the conclusion is, basically, the only way that this can be balanced is if that worker in Mexico makes the same amount of money that the guy at the Dearborn Rouge plant makes putting the car
well, you know what, that ain't gonna happen
And they have
anytime
the
soon.
same regulation.
It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
So we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem.
But here's-
Okay, no debate, no cross-talking.
No,
here.
there's just
Can't allow
a
it,
quick
can't
follow-up.
allow
A quick follow-up. Here's the thing.
it. You follow up to me, not
Are you
Congressman.
willing to pay a little extra
Joe?
if it's made in America?
Hey, Joe, you and Congressman Bentivoglio take this outside.
We'll talk.
Joe,
All right,
this happens every time with you, and I'm really getting tired of it. We have to have decorum. If you need to continue that, go ahead.
all right.
There is some people who have been wanting to ask questions, and I have overlooked. Got to be quick, we really want to close. Mark?
So say I'm Gaddafi, say I'm Libya. What was my motivation way back to want to do this and get off the petrodollar? Why would, I know all the repercussions that I face, why would I go ahead and do such a?
As a president or as a country policy,
Yeah.
why would you want to get off the petrodollar? Because you can't sustain its profitability. Because of abiotic oil. If you understand that the petrodollar is going to collapse because countries are going to dump the currency reserve of the US dollar because they don't have to, they can pump oil, they don't need any production capability of any of these countries. And when the price of oil goes down, they don't make profits. You need to get off of the petrodollar. It was a bad, evil contract that we made with our enemies. We split with our enemies, Saudi Arabia, with Wahhabism. That's what that petrodollar did with Henry Kissinger. And it's a bad, evil thing. And we've used our military ever since to prop it up. That's got to stop. That's the reason we need to get off of it. It's like, I always say, I'm going to close with this, folks. It's like castor oil. It tastes bad, but it's good for you. We need to get off of the petrodollar. God, I pray to the God I believe in, that Donald Trump, Tillerson, and Putin can come to a proper resolution of this petrodollar problem, because they won't talk about it.
If you ever do that again.
Hey, listen, right now.
I asked him to step aside. Now the guy is
All right.
basically insulting me.
All
That's
right,
what you're
please
doing.
sit down.
Yes, you are.
Please sit down. This is the reason. Okay, folks, I'm going to end this right here as far as this camera goes. Before you turn it off, people who are hearing this have to understand that these passions run high because there's an awful lot depending on what we do as a country and what this president does. And I understand the differences. But I, as a director of what goes on here, I am going to guarantee decorum. And I have said over and over again tonight, and we've had plenty of violators, that there will not be table talk talking, and you have to address the director with a question or a follow-up. This has been violated and has caused real problems. So in the future, I apologize to people who have to get through this. It will not happen again. So, as I said that, please don't let the diversion of disagreement disqualify what we have been saying tonight. Because what we have been talking about is so important to the future of this country and our grandchildren. And we need to understand the context of all of this. So with that, thanks for coming out tonight, and drive safely home. Thank you. Good night.